Greetings, comrades. I am Admiral Andre. Welcome to an addendum to our Kerbal career series. This is not a full episode, that's why I call it an addendum, but it's still part of the series in the sense that it will help to shape how it will evolve. So, comrades, first of all, this is going to be quite the story now. I don't want to make it too convoluted or too complicated so it's not fun anymore, but I occasionally go onto Twitch as well and just look around for people playing KSP, and recently I found someone, his name is Mr. Womble. This is his latest KSP episode, and he gave me a lot of inspiration from the things that he does in his playthrough on Twitch. So first of all, I give him credit for that. That's why I'm mentioning him first. So you can certainly see more on his channel there. But what I'm getting at is basically creating a whole kind of procedure for our space program. So it's more, simulating and role-playing what a space program really is and what it's like. Of course, it will never be exact, and we don't want it to be, but it adds a lot of flavor to the whole experience. Now, of course, when you take someone else's idea, you have to put your own unique spin on it, and that's exactly what I've done here. So I'll show you a little bit first of all. Now, when we do missions like we have done in the last episode, the 2 suborbital flights, we have to record them here. So this is what Mr. Womble does in his playthrough, and that's how I got this idea. So you note them here, what they were for, who was the client, where did it launch, when did it launch, what was the cost, the parameters, inclination if relevant, the crew, the outcome, and any other notes. Like, for example, our last mission with Quantum X, the parachute test was not complete, so that's why I call it a partial success. And in this way, we build up a whole mission log for our space program. So that's one thing. The other thing is, of course, our vehicle catalog. This is also what Mr. Womble does. He classifies his vehicles according to their payload capability, which is a real thing. Your small vehicles, your medium, your heavy, and your super heavy, and these are all real figures as well. You can look it up on Wikipedia. These are, of course, the ones that the Indian Space Agency does. I just note them here for now. These are not final things. I'm still working on all of this. Of course, you add an R after the number for a replacement satellite. We could have landing vehicles, etc., etc. This is just initial ideas about these kinds of things. Here we will note the different names and classes for our vehicles. So the Pioneer is, of course, a sounding rocket, and it's individually constructed for once-off use each time. And that is, of course, opposed to normal missions that we will have, where we will have core boosters, possibly parallel boosters, landers, crewed spacecraft, uncrewed spacecraft, etc. Then we can name each of them and save them, of course, and then reuse those, which is a great thing. And this is something I got at in our previous career that we did. It was the same idea of building things to reuse them and to classify them by their payload capability. But this makes it a bit more formal. Of course, I have lots of name proposals here. These are things that I found and discovered and looked up and all kinds of things. Atlas, these are a lot of these are real, of course. Atlas rocket, but others are just, found. Like, I was looking up 15-letter words ending in TY, so incompatibility, complementarity, hyperreactivity, names we can use for different things. Rascomstar is, of course, an African company, and their satellites. These are the comrade names at the moment. The first few, I think up to Speedboy GT, are randomized. Those were comments on the discussion video before. These ones came in on the last episode, and as they come in, I note them down here. Then, of course, this is my special twist to the whole thing. Of course, you have to add your own twist to it. So I am going to be very focused on space debris mitigation standards, which are also a real thing. If you look it up here, especially with UNUSA, the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs, which I know very well, they have mitigation guidelines, but of course the different space agencies also have their own mitigation standards, for example NASA or ESA, especially ESA. Anyway, so that's something I'm building into this whole thing. So we are looking at the different kinds of orbits that you can have. Low orbit, of course, is defined in this case by, of course, when you have low over Kerbal, things like that. So, of course, that's 250 kilometers. But we add a medium orbit as well. Of course, scientifically, in the game, you have low orbit, low over Kerbal, and then high orbit, high over Kerbal. But we add another 2 categories here. So for science, of course, it stays the same. Medium orbit is everything above low orbit, but below the synchronous orbit, which of course in KSP for Kerbal is 2863.33. And then high orbit is everything above that. And in real life, low orbit and the geosynchronous orbit band is considered kind of a protected zone. You really have to be more careful about your space debris. Of course, not everyone follows those standards. They are optional in real life, of course. No one can force somebody like China not to do a missile test and add thousands of debris pieces to the orbital cloud already around the Earth. But in any case, because we are a planetary space agency, we will pay attention to this. So especially if missions are in low orbit, we have to pay attention to mitigation standards, because those are very popular orbital zones of operation. And the same will apply to the Moon or Man, Minmus, Eve, etc., etc. Some of them, of course, even the semi-synchronous orbital band is outside of the sphere of influence. So in that case, I just take low and high. There's no medium or synchronous. For something like Eve, no, not Eve, the Moon, Man, there is no synchronous orbit. It falls outside of the sphere of influence, so in that case I take the semi-synchronous band, and that's the protected zone then. Right. Then, of course, I did that for all of these. You can get this information on the KSP Wikipedia, of course. This is just so I can have it ready at any time. Then, of course, these are some of the principles. You have the end-of-life disposal, the passivation, design for demise. Active debris removal is, of course, something that comes later. On Earth, we're still working on that. Then, of course, I have the UNUSA guidelines, which you will see here as well. This is good. I still want to make an episode about this, like your best practices for KSP to avoid space debris. So limit debris during normal operations, minimize the potential for breakups, limit the probability of accidental collisions, avoid intentional destruction or harmful activities. China, I'm looking at you specifically, and this was their missile test, their anti-satellite missile test they did a number of years ago. Minimize potential for post-mission breakups from stored energy, so you have to vent your energy and you have to empty your batteries. Of course, in Kerbal we can't do that, but it's still a principle here. And of course, limit the long-term presence of spacecraft in protected areas like low Earth orbit or geosynchronous orbit. They have to be moved either to the graveyard orbits or they have to be deorbited. So we are also going to do that. So that's why I have it here. Now, if we just go back to the rule book. So I was thinking now, because Mr. Womble does a very great job at detailing absolutely everything that he does in his playthrough. Now, for example, anytime that there's a launch, he will note it down. Of course, I didn't do that in our first episode, but I went back to look at the approximate times for the various events. And then I thought, well, let me think about this whole thing. What if I made a calendar for KSP? Apparently you can get a mod for that, but I haven't looked at that at all. It's a very out-of-date thing apparently. But that doesn't do exactly what I wanted to do. So that's especially why I wanted to do it on my own first and just think about it before I look at what other people do. So I have it here, comrades. It took me a while to get to this. I broke it down. Of course, you remember this picture from our previous career playthrough. I put it here just for inspiration. And this I made many years ago for like an iterative process if you go through a mission. Design, testing, inclusion of safety, final checks, etc., etc. So this will also be useful for us. Of course, not for what we're doing right now. We're still doing the kind of sounding rockets, so that's not so strict. We're just experimenting at this point, but once we get to orbital launches, then we'll do all of this in more detail here especially. And one of the reasons why is because I also want to kind of limit the reverts that we do. Mr. Womble has a rule that he has no reverts. I won't be that strict, but I still want to limit it at least, so that we have to pay attention to the various processes to minimize risks. Now, first rule for us, design craft in line with debris mitigation standards. So we have to dump our upper stages. We cannot release decouplers unnecessarily into space, things like that. Limit reverts. We have to do detail work on our rockets, stages and payloads, and more focus on realism. This is what I do anyway. Of course, if you know my Apollo or Space Shuttle or anything like that series, I do this anyway. So I just noted this here, just so we can't do kind of super unrealistic rockets. But that's anyway what I didn't want to do. So this is automatic. We have to catalog our launches and all the objects that we place into space. Mr. Womble doesn't do that, so this is my spin on the whole thing again that I add. And this is where we get back to the OSO index, the Outer Space Objects Index of the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs. You can search here for the index. This will have all the objects launched in the in the history of space travel. Most of these were not registered with the United Nations, even though you are actually required to do that. You can do it after the launch as well, so there's nothing to say it isn't still coming. But anyway, there's the Soyuz MS-18, for example, that was launched on the 9th of April. So there we see all of this. This is not for any suborbital launches, so you won't see SN15 and things like that here. And the same principle will apply for us. If I go to our calendar and register, here's our own OSO index. So this I copied also from just, the descriptions online. Of course, adapted to Kerbal. Spacecraft which do not complete an orbit, for example, those that fail, are not assigned IDs, so they are not put into this register because then they are no risk, we don't have to track them. They will only be in orbit for a short time. Now if we go back to the index here, we can see all of them are assigned an international designator here. I think this is the COSPAR designator if I'm not wrong. We can find a satellite. Let's look for Ghana Sat, for example. This is another great website, n2yo.com. Nothing found. That's not good. Ghana Sat. Nothing found again. Let's search for it in here. There it is, Ghana Sat. So its international designator is 1998-067MV. All of the objects that are launched from the International Space Station have the same designator as the space station, except the letters are different at the end. I'll explain that in a moment. So we'll do the same if we ever do launches of satellites from a space station. There it is. So it's just they again say the international code, but I think this is the COSPAR code. Committee on Outer Space Research. Anyway, it's the international designator. So how this works is you take the year, obviously, then this is the number of launches that this is in that year. So this would have been, let's actually go back just take a more recent example. So the Soyuz MS-18 was obviously launched in 2021. It's the 29th launch of the year, and this object is Object A, which is the payload of the rocket. If it's Object B, here you can see all the Starlinks recently, all of them here. You see there's AU, AV, AW, BA, etc. So there's a lot of them here. So the first one is of course the first payload, the second payload, the third payload, the fourth. So you go through the whole alphabet and then you go to AA, AB, AC, AD, etc. So yes, there's even BA. So you're going through the alphabet twice. And BB, etc. If it's, for example, you have one payload and an upper stage that ends up in orbit, then the upper stage will be B. So, for example, the space shuttle was, I think they used the example somewhere. Was it here somewhere? Yeah. So 1990 037B is the Hubble Space Telescope, because 037A was the space shuttle, and the space shuttle itself is a payload. So we'll do this, but I'll drop the 0 because I don't see a reason to have that. We'll probably won't have 100 launches in a year anyway. So yes, so we'll do that. That's one of the things. I'll note the designator here. So obviously year 1, the first launch, and Object A. And then of course I'll name them this as well. This is not replacing the other names like Quantum X and Pioneer and so on. This will just be tacked onto the end so that I can track everything. So once we see pieces of debris, we'll be able to track exactly what the designator is of that space debris. Then we can have a look at what the name of the object is when it was launched. Then we can come back into our log and see exactly what it was for. I think that should be really interesting and fun. Yes, it adds a lot of paperwork, but I mean, it's really easy once we know what to do. I'll just type in the info here and then we go on. Of course, you don't have to see that in every video, so I'll spare you that. Anyway, back to the calendar. So I was thinking about this. How would I break this down? And here you can see I did the calculations in seconds and all of that. So wait, before we get to that, I'm jumping around a lot here. So there's the catalog. So then we also have to build and use specific rocket designs consistently with interchangeability in mind. For example, this is again like we did in our previous career. We'll have a specific booster and we'll reuse that for things that obviously can be carried by that booster. So we don't purpose build every mission. Design, planning and operations episodes, we might have those as well. So in some episodes we'll design the craft, we'll plan, and in other episodes we'll do the actual mission. I think that should work out nicely, also give us a bit of variety. Now, the reason I was working out the whole calendar thing is because Mr. Womble, he times his launches to avoid that they're too close together. He actually shares all of his documents in one of his streams. I do have a link to that. I just made a shortcut to that. But in any case, he says, for example, that he can have a small launch vehicle every 2 days, for example. And of course, this is echoing real life. You can't have 3 super heavy launches in a day and things like that by one space agency on one pad, you know. So we have to have a reasonable time between the missions to give time for building it and preparing the astronauts and doing all of that. Now, you get a mod for that, I know, which gives you actual build time, but I don't want that. So I was thinking, how would I calculate the time between launches and actually the reasonable launch rate? And that's why I made the calendar. So I was thinking, how would a Kerbal break down their calendar? Obviously, on Earth, many cultures use the moon to denote a month, and it's very close to a month because it's 28 days, you know, it's the same as February. It's close to 30 and 31 as well. So I thought, okay, what if in KSP we also use the moon or the mun? I still have to decide what I'm now going to call it, because I've always been calling it the moon, but I see a lot of people call it the mun. But anyway, either or. that could be used, but that's too quick. It orbits Kerbal in just over 6 days, I think. The orbit here is in seconds. I noted everything down in seconds so that I could be more precise. Of course, you can get all of this from the KSP wiki again. So it's just over 6 Kerbal days that the man takes to go around Kerbal. But that's more like a week. And of course, Kerbal doesn't just have one moon, it has 2 moons. So Minmus can be denoting the months of the year. Now, of course, there is a page on the wiki for time, and they do say here that there are months. A Kerbal month is, a solar day is 6 hours, we know that. The Mun has an orbital period of 38.6 hours, that's just over 6 days, which defines a Kerbal month. I disagree with that. I'm not going with that. For me, that defines a Kerbal week, not a month. Minmus defines the months. So I broke it down here, and I had to redo this all the time because I'm rounding everything to fit with a day. And obviously that means it's not going to be precise, because even the Kerbal year is 426 days and 32 hours long, or 32 minutes long. So obviously it's not precisely time to the day, to the solar day. So everything is rounded off here, but at the end of the day I worked it out so that we have, these are the weeks. We have 71 weeks in a year, and the weeks all have, oh no, these are actually the months then, but 71 weeks in a year, and there are 9 months. And each month has 8 weeks, except the last one, which has only 7 weeks to make the whole thing work. Otherwise, because of the rounding errors and all of that, it wouldn't fit. But this makes it fit very well. And then we don't have to worry about some months are shorter than others and things like that. It's always going to be the same. Then I broke it down into years, months, weeks and days. So on this spreadsheet, the cells are weeks. On this spreadsheet, the cells are days. So this is the full Kerbal year. I even gave them days off. That's the weekends. So you can see I'm thinking about this whole thing. So the first month is, I use the same color here as well, or do I? No, I don't actually. I'll have to have a look at that. The second one is the same, green. Yes, it's the same green. I just have to fix the first one. But in any case, so this is 5 years. Each column is a year, and each line here is a week. So that's week 1. There we start week 2, week 3, week 4, week 5, week 6, week 7, and then week 8, and then we start a new month. And so on and so forth, except with the last month, which has only 7 weeks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and therefore it has 42 days instead of the normal 48. But then it works out beautifully to 426 days, so we are only out by 32 minutes a year for our calendar, which of course we can just then pretend the last day is 32 minutes longer, or there's just a little gap of 32 minutes before we start the next year. But of course the Kerbal universal time is always given in years anyway, so year 1 day 57, for example. So if we have a look, year 1 day 57 is the second week of the second month of the year. So we can precisely pinpoint that. So then that gives us the advice that we need for our launch timing, which of course if we go by, you can see I've already put the sounding rockets, the 2 that we've done on the first day. It's already there, and it's already here for the first week as well. But the way to time it then, I did it like in a logarithmic scale. So once every week we can launch a small launch vehicle. Once every 2 weeks we can do the medium one. Once every 4 weeks we can do a heavy launch vehicle. And once every month we can do a super heavy. Of course, it's not going to be at the beginning, but once we actually have the technology to build a super heavy launch vehicle, which is over 50 tons, we cannot actually launch that more than once a month, because it takes time to build the thing and prepare the crew and build, the science and get everything together. Then, of course, Kerbals have rest periods as well. So, for example, a week, which is 6 days. This is what took me a while to get over, the fact that a week is 6 days and a month is 8 weeks. We're so used to having a month being 4 weeks and a week have 7 days. But anyway, and then also I'm thinking about half the time in weeks, rounded to weeks. So if a Kerbal goes on a sounding rocket mission, they Jeb and Valentina in our last episode, they have to rest a week before they can go again. I'm not sure if I want to keep it that yet. It's subject to change, so I might make it shorter as well, because it was just a few minutes up in the air, but of course they have to do training and all of that for each mission. But let's say they go to space and they are there for 5 days, which is almost a week. Then we round that up to the nearest week. So it's then 1 week plus 1 week. So they have to wait 2 weeks before the next mission. I don't know. We'll see how that works, but this is just an idea. Then I also took the figure that we have here from Buzz Aldrin Space Program Manager, which was our Kerbal master plan in our last career. And we have the extended duration level 1, 2, and 3, which I took up to level 5. I don't know if this will be useful, but this is more just like for information. So if a Kerbal goes up in space for less than 6 hours, it's a short stay, because it's less than 1 day. If they go from 1 to 6 days, which is up to a week, it's an extended duration level 1 mission. If they go between 6 and 24 days, which is 1 to 4 weeks, they have extended duration level 2. If they go from 4 weeks to 1 month, it's extended duration level 3. If they go for multiple months up to 1 year, it's extended duration level 4. And if they go over a year on a mission to Duna, for example, it's extended duration level 5. So we have to work them up. You can't just take a new Kerbal and send them on a longer than 1 year mission. That's crazy. They have to get experience through the different stages. So I still want to make a table for the individual Kerbals as well, so we can track them. So anyway, I think that's a very interesting thing to do. Then I was thinking, why don't we give the months names? Because now and the days names as well. On Earth, of course, Monday comes from Moon Day, way back in the day. So Monday stays Monday because the moon is called Mun. But then the second day, Tuesday for us, is called Monday, after Minmus, of course. The third day is Moho Day, so Mo Day. The fourth day, which is Thursday for us, is Dun Day, after Duna, of course. The fifth day, which is a Friday, is Eve Day, or Eve's Day, I haven't decided yet. And the sixth day, which is the weekend, is Jewel Day, or Jules Day. And I was thinking this is interesting also because these are all of the objects that the ancient Kerbals would have seen with the naked eye. You can't just take Eel, for example, or Ilu, or any of the moons of Jewel, because they wouldn't have seen it when the calendar was made. These are all visible with the naked eye from Kerbin. Then I also thought, what about if I put my own twist on that? Because a long time ago in high school, I made my own language. I never got very far with it. I got up to 421 words. But anyway, it's in Afrikaans, then you translate it into my language there. And in this case, I was giving numbers, first the days. The days I would always call, for example, in real life, it would be Monse, Tuse, Vese, Duse, Frise, Satse, Sose. That's my language, how you say the days of the week, which I haven't spoken in more than 20 years, but anyway. Then we can do the same. Manse, Mense, Mose, Danse, Evse, Jose. Jewel, of course. In this case, it's not Jose, but Jewel, so Jose. Anyway, this is just another crazy idea of mine. But then it's the third day of the week is Mose, after Moho. and etc. Of course, the Kerbal speak reverse Spanish, but then it's a bit crazy because I can't pronounce reversed words. You know, it's you can't do that very accurately. I try to write down the numbers here, like see, I'm speaking reverse already. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What's this one? 7, 8, 9, and 10. But then if you, these ones are not reversed yet. But if you reverse them, it gets a bit weird. 1, sod, cert, ortua, oknis, sis, etis, and then ocho basically stays the same. Evenu and zed, something like that. That's a bit weird for me. Otherwise, we keep the numbers the same. Then I thought, what about my own numbers that I made for my language long time ago? Volta, belta, memta, openta, denta, kenta, supenta, lenta, egenta, centa. That's 1 to 10, I think. And if you make them, I don't know what the word in English is, but if you say like the first or the second, then you just add an S. Voltas, beltas, memtas, opentas, dentas, kentas, supentas, lentas, egentas, centas. Anyway, this is going way too deep, but anyway. These were just some ideas, like we also have to keep a ledger for our income and our expenditures. Operational zone of satellites has to do with the space debris management. That the ledger and so on, I don't know. We'll see what happens with that. There's no guarantee I'll stick to all of this, but I just thought this is something interesting to bring to the table. And the inspiration for all of this was Mr. Womble. So I'm making sure I give credit where credit is due. But of course, I put my own spin on it, as you have seen here. So, for example, with the OSO index and things like that, the calendar and all of that as well. So we're not going to launch on a day off if we can help it. Of course, sometimes in the real life you have to launch on a weekend because that's just how things line up. So in that case, we will do it, of course. And if Kerbals are on a mission during the weekends, then tough luck. That's during their work period, like on the ISS. So we'll still check in like on the 90th day, on the 96th day and things like that. But then we can, for example, know that this week we can't launch more than 2 of the small launch vehicles, which are up to 2-ton payloads. We have to wait a whole month before we can launch another super heavy and things like that. It just makes it more interesting, so we are also forced to time warp through the calendar. Otherwise, we do the whole thing in 1 year, you know? You just launch. That's a bit too much. We have to pace ourselves and the Kerbals. Then I thought, what about calling the months of the year something, you know? Of course, again, you get the Spanish names for the months of the year, but reversed, it just gets a bit crazy to pronounce all of that. So I was thinking, what about things like Nana and Mau and Ishel? These are, of course, all gods and goddesses of the moon. Nana was from the Sumerian culture. Mau is from, I have the page open here. It's in Africa. Dahomey, I think. Yes, Dahomey. Mau is the great mother or moon goddess. Selene or Luna, we all know that, so I wouldn't use that. Nana is the Sumerian god. And Ishel is the Aztec one, I think. It's somewhere here. Diana Ishel, yeah. I looked up how you pronounce that. It's Ishel. I don't know if we want to use real world names, but Nana sounds like something that a Kerbal would say. And there's also another Sumerian goddess, Ishtar, which is also called Inanna. So we might then call the last month of the year Inanna. The first one is Nana and the last one is Inanna. But you know, this is more extra stuff. So we could say something is the third day of the first month would be Memtas of Nana. I don't know, but this is adding a unique spin on the whole thing, which has never happened before. But I won't let any of this interfere with our gameplay, don't worry. If it becomes too crazy, then we'll put a stop to it, or we will simplify it further. But these ones, now that I've worked them out, are simply for record keeping. So after we've done a mission, I just type SR for sounding rocket, or HLV for heavy launch vehicle. You know, then it just becomes a way to track it. This is now simple because it's already worked out. This is also simple because I just have to type in the days and the cost and things like that. That's easy enough. I can just pause the recording for 2 seconds and type it in here. I'll always, well, not always, but in this case, CASA, of course, our space agency was one of the clients for this mission, because it was basically to just test our first rocket and give Jeb some experience. The same with the second one, although we also did it for OMB and the R&D, of course. They wanted the parachute test and the TD-12 decoupler test, which we did. So we track this as well. I don't know, we'll see about this, but anyway, there's Baptiste Olympus and Quantum X, Pioneer 2, and yes, so we'll just keep that going. And the other thing was just basically keeping the principles of debris mitigation in mind, and there's of course names. Not all of these are good ones, but I just thought some of them are decent ones. Let's see. Proximity, that could be a satellite. Sagacity could be one. Semionis could be something. Equivocality, maybe not. Clandestinity could be a spy satellite. I don't know. Arrow, Helios, Solaris, Endurance, all the usual names, of course. MSLF, different letters for classes. Acronyms I love, of course. In space you always have lots of acronyms. In my own career save I use OTTO, which is the Orbiting Telemetry and Tracking Object. That's just a small satellite in orbit which I can use to plan different intercepts and things like that. Alpha, Delta, Gamma, whatever. What else? Phenomenon. Satellites, minerals like diamond. The French rocket, of course, was Diamant, I think, one of the first ones. And various particles like neutrons, quantum, etc, etc. Anyway, this video is getting long enough. I just thought I'd share this. I'll still make a video at some point of the principles of space debris mitigation. Then we'll go through a document like this, and the NASA one and the ESA one, and we'll just see like what is a good principle for managing your space activities to avoid problems down the line. Of course, in KSP you can just delete the craft, but it's a good lesson anyway. Right, so that's basically all that I wanted to say here. So we track the things, and I can make a note, for example, as well. Let's search an object, 1957-01A. No objects found. It's because the international designator system changed in the 1960s, so it was actually called Alpha. So it's 1957-01A. Let's try that. Nothing found. Alpha 1, if I can spell right. No, well, we'll search Sputnik then. There's all the Sputniks. Sputnik 1. Where's there? So its designator is actually B, 1957-001. That's why I missed it, because of the extra 0. A would be the upper stage of the R7 rocket then. Let's try that. 1957-001A. Yes, there it is. That's the rocket stage that took the Sputnik into orbit. That was also placed in orbit itself for a while. So yes, we'll do the same thing. You see, that's then the A. which is interesting. Normally it's the A is the payload, but of course that's the old system. Anywho, we'll get a normal episode again on Friday, comrades. So, of course, we can still work out the names of the months if we want to. It's not really a necessary thing. But yes, I'll take your suggestions as well, of course. But we'll see. Otherwise, it's not that important. It can just be the 11th day of the 3rd month of the 7th year. That sounds a little cold, right? But I know the official language is reversed Spanish, but anyway. It's it's the, wait, where's the numbers? It's, let's say, the 7th, well, how would we do 70th? I do have a thing for that. Let's say, I don't think I got up to 70th here. So I know I have 20th, just have to search 20th here. That's Beltem. EM perhaps at the end. So if we then have a number, so Beltem, EM, Voltem, Memtem, Opentem, and then if it's the 33rd, then it would be Memtem, Mentas, and then the month. I don't know, that's getting crazy. I just wanted to share these things with you, comrades, so you can see some of the ideas that I have here. But again, the original credit goes to Mr. Womble there. Right, I will see you again soon, comrades, and then we can see how this will unfold. But the focus is still on our normal career. So see you soon, comrades. Have a great day.